So I've been gone all week, as you know. I went to spring training
Yeah.
with my youngest. I have no idea what's going on in the news. I heard something about Google and Apple, maybe. So fill me in. What happened?
Well, it's pretty much a normal week here in the United States. Let's see. The Apple Car. Apple just announced that the Apple Car is now dead. So you probably need to know a little bit about that. Oh, and we have Black and Asian Nazis now. Yeah, that's right. Gemini, Google thinks that the founding fathers and Nazis and just about everybody you put into the image creator is now multiracial, sort of a Benetton ad. It's Nazis are really a Benetton ad if you
So
think
there's
about it.
basically no black Nazis. Is that
Right.
what you're telling me?
That's exactly right.
I don't know how to take that. I don't know where to go with that.
And now, for your listening pleasure, here's Pulizzi and Rose, covering the week of media, marketing, and digital content news. This Old Marketing. Take it away, boys.
Well, hello, friends. Welcome to This Old Marketing, proudly brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network. You know, it's the business destination for business professionals. I'm Robert Rose, and welcome to episode number 417 for Friday, March 1st, 2024. And with me, as he always is, my friend, my colleague, and a guy who right now is laughing where Bitcoin is at the moment, Mr. Joe Pulizzi.
Yeah, it's been a good couple weeks.
Yeah,
couple months.
yeah.
Year.
It's sort of happening. It's sort of happening behind the curtains too, right? I mean, there's not a lot of the people aren't shouting it from the rooftops, and I don't know if that's because it's sort of like, well, let's just see where it goes, or if it's more like, just let's keep it quiet, let's just let it. But it's up, I think, what, 25 or 30% just in the last week and a half or something.
Yeah, it's just a few thousand from an all-time high.
Yeah,
and it happened in a really quick. And I actually, that's my hit, so I'm going to talk about that.
Okay.
Later. I don't want to get
no spoilers.
Alert,
Yeah, no
spoilers. I want to do that, but yeah, it's been interesting watching as I was almost apologetic 2 years ago when everything went down the dumper, and I'm like, no, there's a place for non-sovereign currency. This is a thing we want, and something built on math.
Yeah,
we should keep our faith, and of course, with I've got a good little take on it, so we'll talk about it later.
Yeah,
but I was telling the truth in the beginning. I have been so out of it because I spent 4 days in Arizona with my son, going to spring training games,
so good,
which was magical. By the way, it was. I don't know if he thought it was magical, but just to have, we're just walking around, Guardians training camp and Dodgers training camp, and just having some good father-son time.
Oh, you got to go to the Dodgers training camp too.
We did. We weren't there when Shohei Ohtani, which is their big,
of course,
their big free agent, 300.
I think he's getting paid $1 gajillion. Is the
I think it's 10 years, 700 million.
Yeah,
I think it's something like that.
It's
which is because we were trying to find our way around. So we went to the Guardians training camp for 2 days. It was fantastic. That's our team. And I'm like, oh my God, this development is fantastic. It's in Goodyear, Arizona. And then I was talking with Adam, my youngest, and I'm like, well, why don't we go see what the Dodgers training camp is like? It's right there. It's like Disneyland for baseball fans, because you can go to 7 different parks and they're really close to each other. So we go and we're trying to find the parking, and we're talking to a security guy, and he's like, it's right over there, but it's good thing you don't come back tomorrow, because Ohtani was supposed to practice and play the next day. He says it's going to be a madhouse with that. So we went over there and we watched a couple of the batting practice and went over and looked at the Dodgers training camp. Is magical. It's got a couple of ponds in there. It's a nice walking path. It's got 9 beautiful fields. And the Guardians one is great. Like, if you didn't see the Dodgers one, you would say the Guardians one is first rate. And then you see the Dodgers. And of course, Los Angeles. Of course. They have to win. Of course. I don't know how they have any money left from
I mean, I was looking at the lineup for the, I mean, they're 1, 2, and 3 batters are player of the year, right? I mean, they're all MVPs.
They've all been MVPs.
Yeah,
They've
all
all been
3 of them have
MVPs.
been MVP. Well, Otani hasn't been MVP yet, but he's,
Oh yeah, he was last year.
Oh, he was.
Yeah,
Okay, well, there you go.
He got it.
So,
He got it.
yeah.
Of course,
So, yeah.
they have. Now, historically, the dream team doesn't work.
Exactly. Yeah. We'll see if it actually works.
The Yankees have tried it forever. You know, you just pay the most money, you get all these all-stars, but I like Otani. Seems like a great kid.
Should be a fun year. It should be a fun year of baseball for sure. Yeah.
Are you going to go to a game?
I'm going to try. Every year I sort of promise that I'm going to get out to a game, and I want to, and then it ends up being just, I mean, look, it's just hard to get anywhere in Los Angeles. And Dodger Stadium is not one of the easier places to get into. I mean, just literally from a logistics standpoint, it's just hard. You just have to, it becomes an all day thing, right? Even if you're going to just go for an early afternoon game, it becomes an all day, you have to get up in the morning and you have to get out there, and then you have to do you're sitting through the game and then getting out and traffic and all that stuff. It's just, it becomes sort of a commitment.
Well, can't you just take Los Angeles' wonderful subway system?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
It would be exist. So the first time I ever went to LA, because especially when I started doing my traveling for business and speaking and things, I would get my early consulting gigs. I had no money. So I was looking for the cheapest transportation in every city. And I'm like, LA subway system doesn't go anywhere you need to go.
No, well, here's the thing. It does, but the thing is that LA is so big, right? Everything is so spread out that even if you take it to, like, for example, if you want to go to Hollywood, you can go to Hollywood. You can get on the train and go to Hollywood. Yeah. It's very hub and spoke. For those of you who've never seen a map of the LA subway, there's a hub downtown and it sort of spokes out from there. But the problem is the further out, sort of in the hinterlands you get, the wider the spokes are, right? And there's no crosstown, right? There's no sort of spider web connecting all of the spokes. And so the problem is that in order to go, like, literally maybe 10 miles to your east, you have to go all the way downtown, get on the other spoke, and then come all the way back out again. And it's not efficient for that kind of purpose, for getting around town. If you want to go someplace like downtown, it's fine, right? You can find a train station relatively close to you, but it's not really a subway system as much as it is sort of just a commuter train to downtown. So,
I do love the weather. It's all I gotta say.
We live in paradise. Yeah,
I don't like getting around LA, but I do enjoy that. Anything else going on? What's happened since before we get to the news? I just feel so out of touch.
Yeah, well, not a lot. I mean, there's, I guess the biggest stories in politics are Trump won again. Big shocker there, except he also got a $470 million now, and he can't make the bond. And
he has to pay.
He has to. The judgment was 3 weeks ago or whatever, and now he can't. He came out they submitted an 1,800 page thing to the judge, basically saying, 470 million is just a little too rich for our blood. We'd like to negotiate that to $100 million for the bond so that we can actually appeal this ruling. And so far, the judges haven't ruled on any of that. We'll see what happens in the coming days, but it looks like Mr. Trump is out of money. Basically.
We stayed at a True by Hilton in Goodyear, very nice hotel, and very nice. But there's a picture of Donald Trump on the television, and it's just weird because it's orange and then there's light pink, and I really didn't know if that was really him or if the makeup just didn't work that morning.
No, it's getting worse and worse. Yeah,
I did see that Mitch McConnell is stepping down.
Yes, Mitch McConnell is stepping down.
I thought that happened years ago. Like I didn't. I thought that he stopped representing the people years ago. I didn't know that he was still doing that job.
Yep, the turtle is going away. The turtle's going into his shell. Yeah, for sure.
I think I'm gonna miss him.
You're really not. You're really not.
I'm gonna miss him.
I don't think any of us. Anyway. We have a big show.
Yeah, what
We
do we
have a
got
big
going
show.
on?
We got a good show here. We're going to talk a little bit. Speaking of politics, we're going to, our open with our big story, which of course is on the Supreme Court. They are hearing arguments about laws on free speech, and that especially pertains to social media. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that might look like. And then we'll move over to the journalistic side of things, and we'll talk about Vice. They are shutting down their website and going all in on publishing on other people's platforms. Let's see how that works out for them. And then we'll. Once we get into the other stories, we'll talk about Google search and some people asking if Google search, the era of Google search, is now finally over. And then Tyler Perry, the Hollywood mogul, I guess at this point you would call Tyler Perry, he is shelving an $800 million project over AI concerns. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Then we'll get to our hits and misses. And I'm going to talk about Air Canada and a big AI sort of warning shot across the bow. You're going to talk shockingly about Bitcoin and sort of
shocking.
You're going to
I'm
revel
shocked
in that for a little bit. And then we'll get to our rants and raves, where I'm going to talk a little bit about this new trend of fractional CMOs, which I myself am finding myself part of. So I'll talk a little bit about my experience thus far. And you're going to talk a little bit about Florida, my favorite place.
you
Passing a law.
Absolutely loathe Florida.
I really do. No kids under 16 can get access to social media, which is the most Florida thing ever. And you'll talk about that.
I will.
So
you know who really loves Florida right now is Jeff Bezos.
I can imagine. Yes, I can imagine he does.
So the thing that I just can't even comprehend is the fact that he's moving from Washington to Florida, and he's been planning this for a while so he can sell Amazon stock.
Yep.
He's saving $600 million just by moving.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm trying to figure this. This has got to be 20-30 billion dollars or whatever it is, something significant in order to save $600 million.
They're talking about it. They're talking about introducing new laws, tax laws that would prevent that kind of thing, right? I mean, because if you think about it, there's so much of that goes on, especially in California, right? So the thing to do in California is if you're the founder of a startup, right? In fact, I know a guy who did this. He was a very early investor in Uber, like pre everything. He was an early investor in Uber, and lived in California. And basically, when Uber went public, he was in multi-million, hundreds of millions of dollars. It was his worth, and he basically moved to Vegas. He's moved to Vegas because he's going to establish residency in Las Vegas and Nevada, where there is no tax. So when he ultimately cashes out of Uber, he's not going to get taxed on it at the state level, because that's, of course, California. So there's a lot of that going on.
We were in, not to just prolong the show over nothing, but this is important. When my wife and we took our recent cruise and we stopped in Grand Turk in the Turks and Caicos, the tour guide was really big on selling land, and so basically you're not taxed on the property ever. So you buy a property there, you're not taxed on it ever.
Yeah.
You never have to do anything with the property, and when you buy in, you automatically get citizenship to Turks and Caicos and the UK, because it's a UK territory, and you don't pay taxes on anything. And I'm like, well, how? We were talking about, well, how does Grand Turk support itself? Like, where is it getting money? Every time a ship comes in, a cruise ship comes in, everybody on that boat, it's $9 a person they get.
Wow.
So they make all their money off of the cruise industry.
That's amazing.
And of course, there's 2 huge boats there while we're there. I'm doing the math. I'm like, oh yeah, they're getting $150,000 just from this stop.
That's right.
Like, okay, this is right.
And it probably happens 4 or 5 times a day.
But the no taxes thing is big. Like when you stop at any island in the Bahamas or whatever, it'll say, hey, you can live here and pay no taxes forever. So it's a thing. I was looking for Jeff Bezos, but he wasn't.
There you go. Well,
he couldn't be found.
You could move to Turks and Caicos.
I would
do tilt publishing from Turks and Caicos.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
It is
really
beautiful.
is.
It is
Yeah.
really beautiful there.
Yeah. So
It's
all right.
all right.
Good.
Okay. Well, speaking of not beautiful things, let's talk about the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, now, as we speak, literally is starting to hear the case of Texas and Florida and their regulation of social media moderation. This has come to us from the SCOTUS blog. That's the Supreme Court of the U.S., their blog. And it opens up by saying the Supreme Court on Monday, that's just this Monday, appeared skeptical of a pair of laws in Texas and Florida that would regulate how large social media companies control content posted on their sites. During nearly 4 hours of argument, several justices suggest that the laws violate the First Amendment because they infringe on the ability of companies like Facebook and YouTube to make decisions about the content that appears on their platform. But at the same time, the justices expressed concern about the posture in which the company's challenges came to court, suggesting that it could prevent them from weighing in on the Florida law in particular. Basically, the article goes on basically to talk about who's representing who, the teams, what their stats are, which one came from MVP levels and all that sort of thing. It's very very high level at this point. But basically, then it gets into finally, some of the questions that some of the Supreme Court justices were asking, and it seems like, which seems like a big no duh to me, that they're sort of skeptical of this whole sort of, oh, you're censoring my stuff, sort of position that the states are taking with regard to social media. But did you have a different take on that?
I don't think this has. I don't think this is going anywhere.
Yeah, I don't think it is either.
This is kind of ridiculous, and I didn't really know that it originated from the January 6th thing. It's like, oh, that our side wasn't told. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. This is these are private companies. And
if this is to be careful what you wish for, right? I mean, this is, here, it's like, I don't think you've thought this through, the sort of thing, right? It's because if they win, if they won, what they're basically saying is that private companies have to apply both sidesism or both sides journalistic standards to their, in other words, they can't edit anything. They have to basically let everybody's freak flag fly and let everything go, and they have no control over it. So the platforms are kind of like, okay, I mean, really? But at the same time, then they're saying, well, they're and by the way, that would apply to all kinds of companies, not just social media companies. It would apply to all kinds of companies, which is just, it's crazy what they're asking for. It's just a silly thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, I got nothing good to say about it. Yeah. It's just silly. This is not going anywhere. It's not going to go anywhere, right? It's just like,
I can't imagine that it. I can't imagine that it does. Basically, you can't make this. I think one of the arguments, and maybe this is Texas in particular, which it would be very Texas thing to argue for, is that it should be at the state level. Like these decisions should be at the state level, which is just, again, ridiculous in modern times to say, oh yes,
in Texas, company.
Yeah, well, I mean, right. I mean, so in basically what they'd be saying is, in Texas, if you live in Texas, you have to allow free speech on Facebook. But if you don't live in Texas, Facebook can edit and take away your posts, or they can, game the algorithm however they want to game it. I mean, when you start actually getting into the details of any of these things, it just becomes so ridiculous so fast that it's like, what is it you really want here? I mean, is it you're just complaining that there's more people that aren't on your side talking, or is it you're actually wanting them to put their thumb on the scale of content? It's like, what are you really asking for here?
So does that mean, so something like this passes, that means that if you're on, let's say, a Truth Social, which is very conservative, then they have to allow equivalent amounts of liberal content? That's really what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Of all of them. So you have to look at everything, and it's too broad. It doesn't make any sense. Let's go to the next news item. We had to cover it. I think it's important to cover.
It's a big story.
Our audience needs to know that
that's right.
This is going on. It's going to go, the Supreme Court's going to make a decision, by summer sometime?
Yes, that is correct.
Which, by the way, who knows? Now that I say that it's not going to go anywhere, I just said that it's going up to the Supreme Court in the summer, and now I'm thinking, well, maybe it will pass.
Right.
Maybe,
Well,
maybe
we are, as we said in the cold open, this is weird times. It's just weird times right now because the Supreme Court is also hearing, by the way, which we're not going to cover on the show, is whether Trump is completely immune from prosecution while he was president. So it's like, we're literally going to the Supreme Court. Remember the famous saying where he said, I could walk down Fifth Avenue and shoot someone and I would be fine. We're literally going to the Supreme Court to basically test that theory. That's how crazy things have become.
I've honestly had conversations with my wife about not being in the country during the election, but I think it should like months. We might be doing this podcast a whole different way.
Turks and Caicos. Let's go, man. Let's go.
I'm looking at a little plot in Grand Turk. It's very
go.
Nice. Yeah. It's gonna
nice.
Make it happen. I'll invite you. We'll do a live show.
I'm in on the beach. Pina coladas on the beach. There we go.
There you go. Okay.
All right. Next story here. And this one actually is quite interesting and very relevant to us as marketers and as content creators. This comes to us courtesy of Fortune, although there are a number of media companies that are covering it. And in fact, there was a LinkedIn blog post that sort of seems to have kicked things off here that several people sent me directly through DMs. And the headline is that Vice Media, once valued at $5.7 billion, is shutting down Vice.com and laying off several hundred staff. But that's not really the story. The article, as it opens up, says basically Vice Media plans to lay off several hundred employees and here's, the real story, and no longer publish material on its Vice.com website, the company CEO said in a memo on staff on Thursday. Vice, which has filed for bankruptcy last year before being sold for $350 million to a consortium led by the Fortress Investment Group, is also looking to sell its Refinery 29 publishing business, which, by the way, is a content marketing type of business. It's the latest sign, says the article, of financial problems buffeting the media industry. Digital sites The Messenger, BuzzFeed News, and Jezebel have all shut down in the past year. No, I don't. Well, anyway, legacy media outlets like the Los Angeles Times, Washington Post, and Wall Street Journal have also seen job cuts. All right, that's neither here nor that. That's a little bit of a stretch.
Basically,
but anyway,
they're saying the media industry's falling apart.
They basically had to go. How do I twist that into a thing? And it's like you need to get something about the mainstream media in there too.
News is burning. Something like that.
Anyway. So the headline to me which was interesting, and this was more in the memo, if you read that, than it was in the story that was covered. And maybe that's just because who we are. It's what, basically stood out to me was they're killing their website. They're basically going to have all their reporters publish elsewhere. And I had all the DMs that came into my, LinkedIn based on that LinkedIn post were all like, rented land, anybody? It seems like such a dumb move, but am I missing something?
I think it's incredibly dumb.
Yeah.
I think this is stupid with a capital S. But I think you're right. I think this is like a temporary thing that they're just mentioning before they actually like stop producing everything. It's like I said, we're not closing up shop. We're going to do this new strategy that is absolutely not going to work, but we're basically giving ourselves 9 months.
That's right.
12 months or whatever. So it's ridiculous. I think there's a couple things I think are worth talking about, especially for our audience. The one is, can a news content business model survive today?
Yeah.
I think
that's the question.
Because of course we know that traditional media outlets print, they came from, like, let's say, newspapers and then went on to digital. A lot of those business models haven't worked. We've even talked about on the show about we'd love to see these be content marketing efforts where, like in Cleveland, if you had a progressive take over the publication Cleveland.com or the Plain Dealer, that could be a thing. But I think the other thing that a lot of people aren't talking about here is that, and I think content marketing organizations do this wrong as well, they scaled up way too quickly.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at the way that Vice built this, if I recall correctly, they brought in a lot of talent. A lot of
Yeah.
high-priced talent, a lot of executive talent. They paid a lot of people a lot of money, especially in the heydays when it was worth 5.7 billion, and didn't do it. If you look at Axios, who we cover all the time what they're doing, they sort of started small and then went vertical, and they didn't say, "Oh, we need 100 people in our news team to
Sure.
make this happen."
Documentaries on HBO, the whole
Yeah,
thing, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. They basically did it the right way, and they said, "Okay, we're going to test this out, have 1 or 2 people, and then we're going to grow from there and work." Instead of Vice saying, "Oh, we're going to do the big thing," and Vice News and the whole thing. So I think that's where they went wrong. Is I think this model could have worked for Vice, but their expenses are so incredibly high. If you would have started with a smaller
But you
expense
gotta,
base,
but you gotta figure the website isn't one of those, right? I mean, you just have to. I mean, just publishing to your. I mean, even if literally it's a WordPress site with everybody's articles
yeah,
just joined together, you cannot imagine that the website is a cost item that's going to save them a tremendous amount of money, and it just cuts the head off of the whole thing, right? I mean,
yeah,
yeah, I don't mind the strategy of taking your talent and I mean, it's one of the first things that we advise, right? When we're talking to a content creator or someone who's going to make their business around creating content. Yes, at least my advice to those people is always the first thing you do is build your sphere of influence, whether that's a newsletter, whether that's a website, whether that's a blog, whether your sphere of what is your center of gravity
yeah.
and where you want to pull people into and build your audience. Then second step number 2 is because nobody knows you exist. Yes, take your best talent, meaning you probably, but your best talent, and be everywhere else. Be where your audience is, right? Guest blog, be on podcast, go speak, write a book, all be everywhere that's not, but pull those people into your center of gravity. And so I just can't imagine that once you've done that, as Vice did, that it makes any sense to like delete, explode your planet, in other words, your big sphere of influence, your center of gravity, and just let everybody sort of dangle out there in the rest of the universe. It just doesn't make any sense.
That's why I think that plan is pretty much nonsense.
Yeah.
I think it's just buying time. So
You think it's the private equity company basically going, look, we just need to wind this thing down slowly?
I think they're winding it down. I think
Yeah.
they're absolutely winding it down. And
Yeah.
and this is the thing. It's like I want to say that it's not one thing. This is a news business model issue. This is the way they set it up issue. This is the way they went to market. I mean, there's a whole bunch of issues here that is, we probably could have seen it years ago and say, if they keep it up, I had this conversation with my son. We were talking about just rich people. Of course, we're around baseball players that are making
Right.
30, 40, 50 million dollars a year. And we just got into what is rich. And I said, rich to me is somebody that you're making more than your expenses. And I said, there's people out there that are making $30 million who are poor.
Yeah.
Because they have annual expenses more than $30 million. That is Vice. Vice could have been a profitable company, but I think it was set up wrong. And that's why when you go into here's the same. Who's Vice competing with now? They're not competing with other news organizations. They're competing with content marketing efforts, and they're competing with content creators that have very, very low expenses.
Yeah.
And they can continue to create all this content against you, and they don't have to worry about the cost line because there's not many. So anyways, it's just, you can't build up this news organization like we could in the 90s. It just doesn't happen anymore.
It absolutely is the case. Well,
yeah.
Yeah.
I said it. I said it. That's it.
Speaking of keeping the expenses less than the revenue, we should probably exhibit about how rich this show is.
Yeah, let's
and pay a couple of bills.
We'll do that now.
You ever wonder what unicorns eat for breakfast? All right, I don't actually know the answer to that, but what I do know is that 20% of all unicorn startups, they're using HubSpot, and for good reason. HubSpot's all-in-one platform levels up your sales, software, and support. Plus, they have a huge collection of resources to help startups scale, and with HubSpot for Startups program, you can save big off your first year. To see if you're eligible to save on HubSpot, visit HubSpot.com/startups. Want a cool new podcast for your commute? Well, let me give you a nudge. Yeah, that's right, nudge. Nudge is hosted by Phil Agnew and focuses on how the smallest changes can have the biggest impact. It's a show with simple, evidence-backed tips to help you kick bad habits, get a raise, and grow a business. Every bite-sized 20-minute show comes packed with practical advice from admired entrepreneurs and behavioral scientists. Nudge is fast-paced, but still insightful with real-world examples that you can apply. Oh, and it's also the UK's fastest growing business podcast. Here's your nudge to get nudge wherever you follow your favorite podcasts.
You know, I would like to go to a store called Fudge.
Fudge?
Fudge, and I love chocolate. Do you like chocolate?
I love chocolate.
I
and I
even
love
like
fudge.
fudge
I love
even more.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought of when I was listening. All I thought about was, I'm hungry. I like some fudge.
You can make a podcast called Fudge. I guarantee you somewhere there's a podcast called Fudge.
But it's not about fudge, I bet.
I'll bet you it's not
probably
either.
about something else.
Yeah.
But it could be about many other things. Anyways, next. This is a weird, this is like an award-winning show.
It is. Is this
as such?
Because watch this. Watch this. Speaking of fudge, is yeah. See what I watch this. Yeah. Watch. Okay. Speaking of fudge, is Google in-shitifying?
Oh God. I knew it was coming.
Yeah, that is the new word that apparently is at the core of a headline that
Have you heard about that word before?
Enshittification? Yes, because I follow Cory Doctorow. Yeah.
Oh, I had not. I'm sorry, I didn't want to steal your thought.
No. It's all good. So the headline here that we're going to talk about is the Google search era over? And this comes to us courtesy of Morning Brew. And it starts off by saying, try Googling, has Google gone downhill? And you'll notice that many people are convinced that the answer is yes. The first blue link will take you to a collection of Reddit rants. That's pretty much the top response for any query, by the way, on Google, as a collection of Reddit rants, full of complaints about paid ads and product peddling spam sites that seem to frequently prevail among Google search results. Recent research suggests that the frustration isn't just nostalgia for some mythical heyday of the 25-year-old product. A group of leading internet scholars from Germany, the Germans, they found out that Google struggles to keep sites with misleading product reviews over its top results. Google told Gizmodo that junk results mostly come up for queries about products. That's not a good thing, Google. And that it's made improvements to clutter-proof its algorithms. But while Google was found to perform better than search rivals Bing and DuckDuckGo, Google's misfires are magnified given that it commands over 90% of the world's search market, and its current primacy doesn't mean it should kick back and take it easy. And basically, then it gets into the is Google and-shitifying, which is a concept promoted by Cory Doctorow, the sort of journalist, internet pundit, I guess. He's been around for a long time. Yep. Used to enjoy his articles very much. Who says the internet culture critic has described this term to describe the decay of mature online platforms when they choose to juice profits at the expense of user experience. And he claims that Google's top results have become dominated by spam, scams, and ads. He says it's too easy for sites pushing useless content to manipulate the guarded algorithm that ranks search results. So, what do you think about all of this? I mean, we've talked a little bit about this before, but I think it's finally coming to a head.
I think we're talking about this because of the fact that more people are using things like ChatGPT for search.
Yeah,
that's why it matters now. What you just talked about has always been the case, in my opinion, for the last 5 years. I mean,
oh sure, but it's gotten worse. It's definitely gotten worse.
But here's the thing. There's now an option. When Michael Stelzner was doing his opening keynote at Social Media Marketing World, he asked everyone how many people are using their first response for search as ChatGPT. And I would say about 40% of hands went up, and that I was shocked. I was like, you got to be kidding me that much, especially with we know that LLM database is faulty. Which we talk about with like Google Gemini and other things like that. There's some big issues right now with what's going on with AI content. So we know that AI search model is faulty, but yet we're going to that over Google search. Big issue. But I guess what I would say is, this is what I want your take on. Google has plenty of time to fix this because they have, what I just checked, 120 to 150 billion with a B dollars in cash. That'll fix a lot. I think that's
it
going
will.
to be, they'll be able to turn the ship around if it comes to that. Not that they're in any danger. They still have 90% of that traditional search engine market. But I think when you say they are whatever 80 or 90% leaders in search, that's not true. That's just with search engines.
Right.
Search is now many other things, including now ChatGPT, AI, other things.
That's right. I mean, there have been, so the growth of verticalized search has starting to eat away at that as well. So for example, and there's been a lot of research actually done on this, and you can find it if you go out and look for it. The idea of, for example, verticalized search for, the number one product search engine is Amazon, right? If people are
Sure.
searching for products, they don't go to Google anymore, they go to Amazon. It's the number one. If you're looking for video content, of course, that's what YouTube now, that's a Google property, of course, but if you're looking for, YouTube is the number two search engine out there. And then you look at maps, location. Like if you're looking for directions, it's not Google, right? It's going to be it can be Apple in many cases, and it can be others in other cases.
And then restaurants, it could be Google, or it could be something
Yelp.
like a Yelp.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Shopify is becoming a big search engine. So is things like Kayak for travel, and all of those things are becoming verticalized search engines, and that is eating a little bit away at the and again, to your point, not a lot, right? We're not talking about a huge market erosion, but enough that it's meaningful for their advertising revenue, to the point where, like literally as you were talking, I did a Google search literally live while we're talking about this for web content management.
Okay.
And it used to be the first three. Well, now it's the first five. The first five results are sponsored. So, and on my browser, that's all the way down to the when I got to scroll, right? That's the whole screen it takes up with sponsored research. Then it goes to the generative AI experiment, right? Because I'm signed up for that. And so their Gemini AI answers the question for web content management. And basically, it sources a few articles that don't seem terribly relevant, but seem fine. Then it goes to their knowledge graph stuff, which pulls in sort of information that scrapes and pulls it into the Google search engine result. Then it goes back to a more sponsored results. And so it's like, it's a little nutty right now in terms of the way that you're getting search results, and how much of it is either sponsored or it seems like they're trying to throw different interfaces at you to see which one you're going to like better. The user experience itself is not better. And I think you're right. I mean, I think they've got time to fix it. But the real question is will they fix it in time for, I'm finding myself more and more going to chat because the kinds of queries that I'm usually looking at, unless I'm looking for a range of answers of things, if I'm looking for a range, send me, because I'm looking for a specific source or a specific website for an article or something like that, then I'll use Google. But otherwise, chat's doing a pretty good job of sourcing material these days. Like if I go in and say, hey, listen, what's the answer to this research question? It'll usually give me a pretty good answer. It's not always great, and it takes a little effort. You got to validate it, but then it'll source. It's putting footnotes in there, which is, I have to say, is pretty interesting.
So we've focused on search engine optimization all these years and being found. Well, if that's not as important and critical, and everyone's moving over this behavior to, let's say, some kind of AI search function, does that means that from the content we create, we should be looking at some, what you would call, I think, big pillar content, like research reports,
100%.
books, because those are the things that I think will get indexed by AI when you become the leading expert in something and something that people talk about.
Yep.
So So that's a big movement. I think if I'm looking at
Well,
strategically from a content marketing perspective, I'm like, I need some big pillar. Like I need to be the leading informational expert in this thing. And I can't just say, oh, as long as we're found for these keywords, we're going to be fine. Not the case anymore.
yeah, I mean, I'll talk a little bit about this when we get to our winners and losers or hits and misses, which is right now what we've been talking with clients about that we've been working with is you need to look at the corpus of your website. You've probably got a weedy, overgrown website, and even if you don't have that, there are almost assuredly things out there that are inaccurate about your company, and inaccurate, not because somebody got it wrong, but because it's years old. And the problem is that when ChatGPT goes out to look at stuff, it basically goes out and looks at it and says, what's the most that's out there? And in the article that I wrote last week for CMI, I talked about this where I said, look, I went out and did a search. For example, I went out and did a search for, 2 CRM companies and their pricing. And basically both of them were wrong. They were just wrong pricing. And it's not because that the right pricing wasn't there. It's because old pricing still existed in more proclivity than did the new pricing. So we have to be really careful about what we're putting out there now. And by the way, but putting enough of it out so that we can actually start to rank.
And by the way, really good time right now to search your own brand names, yourself individually.
Sure.
Do it on Google as well as on AI. And I'll give you a quick example. I was on Jason Barnard's podcast, and we were looking at my branded search for Joe Pulizzi, and Google pulls who Joe Pulizzi is from Google Books from my original book back in 2008.
Yeah.
It says I worked for Junta 42 and I was chief content officer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's 15 years old, like whatever.
Yeah.
And Google's pulling, and they're not changing that. So you have to look at, okay, what do I have to do? What changes do I need to make so that everyone's listening to who I am?
They will change some of it though, because what they will do is, especially in the knowledge graph stuff, you can claim your panel basically. Because when I used to do my own branded search, I would come up and it would source books to me. It would source books to me that I'm like, excuse me.
Where'd this come
really
from?
there was some book on back pain or something like that I was being sourced to, and all this.
I think that's your best book, by the way.
Yeah, and there was one on like
American,
American indigenous peoples, history and stuff like that. It's like, and by the way, there's not another Robert Rose author. It was just they were just mistakenly pulling in somehow. I don't know. So I went in and basically said, "This is wrong. Please fix it." And to their credit, it took them a while, but they did, right?
Yeah, and I did the same thing with Google, but who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? All right.
Let's move on now to our other quick story here, which is, of course, Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry has shelved an $800 million project over AI concerns. Never has 2 dogs recording a podcast created this level of existential fear. That is the weirdest subheadline. That almost sounds like some sort of every good boy does fine sort of thing.
But that's Morning Brew. That's what they do.
All right.
They're cute with all their the first sentence is always some kind of weird reference.
Never has 2 dogs recording a podcast created this level of existential fear, says the article. Entertainment mogul Tyler Perry said he was halting plans for an $800 million expansion of his Atlanta movie studios after seeing the capabilities of Sora, OpenAI's jaw-dropping text-to-video model that debuted on social media less than 2 weeks ago. The sight of dolphins riding bicycles compelled Perry to sound an alarm.
It was that one. It was the dolphins that did it.
That's just a funny sentence.
Yeah, that's
the sight of dolphins riding bicycles compelled Perry to sound an alarm about the future of filmmaking.
Dolphins compelled thee. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh. I that's the name of my new book. Dolphins Riding Bicycles Compelled Me. Sorry, that just makes me giggle. This will touch every corner of our industry, says Perry, in leveraging AI in his work. Less travel, fewer sets to build, more exotic locations built through text. but they don't outweigh his concerns for everyone in the movie making business, from actors to crew members to transportation. These worries are not new. The use of AI was one of the big sticking points for striking writers and actors last year, who negotiated guardrails into their new contracts. So I definitely have a take on this, but I would love to hear yours. What do you think? What's your first thought when you think about this?
My first thought was not the AI thing. It was, what is Tyler Perry building an $800 million
right
facility?
It's called about burying the lead, right?
What is, like, we talked about it before. I think he's building actual dinosaurs for like Jurassic Park or something. Like, there's what it's maybe,
Are you
maybe
building
it's
a theme park? What? Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe there's $750 million in gold stored in there, and then we're building $50 million around it. I don't know what. So fine, he's making this decision not to do it, but thank goodness. I'm like, thank goodness the Dolphins on the bicycle shook some sense into Tyler,
right?
And he's not overspending. What's everybody overspending for?
Right.
What time is? What is this? What year is it? Is this the year 1999?
Exactly. It's exactly. I mean, look, the news about Sora and AI is one, but I mean, we just talked about a few of them, right? Google search. We talked about Vice. We talked about all those things. It's like, if any of those stories and the hundreds of other stories about the media, the world of media right now, including, by the way, the actors and writers strike and AI and all those kinds of things. At what point, what I want to know is, at what point in the last however long it's been, Tyler Perry was looking at it going, yeah, this $800 million studio that I'm going to build, this is good. This makes good sense. This makes really good sense. Yeah. In today's world, it makes perfect sense. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to put almost $1 billion into building a movie studio right now in one singular physical location, because that makes total sense right now with where the media business is. It's like, that's just
the only thing
insane.
The only thing I could say on Tyler Perry's behalf is, I would have said the Medea movies would not succeed. Like, that's ridiculous. And of course, that's $1 billion franchise. So, hey, maybe let's give Tyler Perry the benefit of the doubt, and the $800 million thing would have paid off. But now, not so much. But what are you doing instead? That's a big, like, I'm sure there were investors there. Like, do you?
Oh, sure.
What do you? What do you do with that money?
Well, that's the question. Is, so that's why I think this is all. This is called Hollywood press release time, right? It's like, at some point somebody went, hey, this isn't a good idea, full stop. It's like, well, how do we spin it? How do we spin the fact that we're stopping, that basically we've either, the investors backed out, or we don't have the money, or we don't think them spending this money is wise, or whatever. It's like, oh, I know. Perfect. Sora just got launched by OpenAI. We'll blame it on AI, right? It's perfect. That's the perfect. It
really could have been somebody just missed 3 zeros. It could have been $800,000.
It could have been. Yeah, it very well could have been. Yeah. All right, let's get to our hits and misses here, where each of us pick a winner from the week or a loser from the week in marketing. And by the way, hits and misses, we've got a new little fun intro from one of our friends and family of the show to sort of tee up. So tee up that hits and misses introduction.
We're going to do it?
Do it.
Okay, here it is. Let's see what we got. Let's see if I did this right.
In the shadowy corners of the digital world, where ambition meets reality, the stories of internet entrepreneurs and online marketing unfold like a mystery. This is Hits and Misses, where the old school marketing detectives, Joe Pulizzi and Robert Rose, peer into the bright glare of success and the long shadow of failure.
Oh, he's so good. He's so good.
Oh my God. I want a cigar and a cognac.
Oh my God. That's so good.
This is wow. What a voice.
Failure.
I don't know if I could do the rest of the show now.
Yeah, that's so good. That's Robert Riggs, everybody, the amazing podcaster and friend and family of the show. Thank you, Robert, for that.
So good.
That may be hard to do every week, but we'll occasionally bring it out and sort of introduce our hits and misses with that, because that's good. So do you want to go first with your
mine's
rave?
Quick. Mine's quick. My hit of the week is absolutely Bitcoin. We covered some of this on the beginning. And people probably want to know, like, why now? Like, why is so just so everyone knows, as we're recording this on Leap Day, the Bitcoin is up to about 63,000 per
amazing.
coin, doing very well. It's up significantly this year. It was up significantly last year. There's a couple things happening right now. First of all, there's something that'll happen. We don't know exactly when, but in a couple months, called the halvening. And basically that's when, I don't want to get too technical, but the supply of Bitcoin continues to get cut every 4 years. The supply that miners can actually mine every day. And that makes it there's even less opportunity. There's even less Bitcoin out there in distribution. So you have less supply, you have more demand. That's the more demand part is really what's going on right now. Bitcoin ETFs have been approved. They were approved a couple months ago. And what you're seeing here is the desire from global finance around the world now having vehicles in the form of ETFs that they're comfortable with investing in Bitcoin. I would say that most large financial organizations were not, they wanted to try out Bitcoin. They had their clients that wanted to get into Bitcoin, but they didn't have the suite of tools necessary to invest in Bitcoin. That is now possible. I think there's 9 ETFs out there right now, and the inflows into these ETFs are setting records every day because there's so much money coming into this. At the same time, there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin, and most of the Bitcoin that is owned right now, people do not want to sell. These are long-term holders that probably believe that Bitcoin is going to $1 million a coin plus. So there's just so much demand right now and so little supply.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing, I could easily see, this is not a financial show, but I could easily see Bitcoin up 10,000, 20,000 in a day, like as these things get squeezed and go on. I'm fully expecting Bitcoin to be over 100,000 this year. But again, not a financial show.
Yeah.
Don't take my advice. I'm just throwing it out there. We're 69,000 is the all-time high. I think that'll happen in the next week or so.
Yeah.
I really do. But
Yeah.
who knows?
We should have Robert Riggs do the disclaimers, the financial.
But again, I'm in it for.
Yeah.
I'm a long-term hodler.
Yeah,
I've been in Bitcoin since 2016.
Yes, and full transparency, I got out of it. I got out of it at the end of last year.
I bought Robert's Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Your Bitcoin and Ethereum. But anyways, I believe there's a place for a non-sovereign currency. And now that the regulation is a little bit out of the way because you have real, traditional financial institutions that are getting behind this is just the start. Whew. Yeah. That was always the problem. It was always like, oh, it's this little risky thing. Well, not so risky anymore. And that's why you're seeing this big bump up. So there you go. Anyways.
Anyway. All right. Well, I got a big loser this week. The big loser is Air Canada. Asked my colleague Kathy McKnight about Air Canada, and she'll rail and rant for a while, but because she has to live Air Canada for all of her travel living in Canada. But Air Canada this last week was found liable for a really interesting thing. We'll link to an article about this in The Guardian. Actually, there's a few places that are covering it, but The Guardian does a nice job of sort of covering what actually happened here. And basically, here's the story. So a guy goes on Air Canada's website and basically interacts with their chatbot, their AI chatbot, and asks the chatbot, hey, I need to go to visit a dead relative, basically, and, to attend the funeral, et cetera, et cetera. I need to know, and I have to make this decision right away. I basically want to know bereavement fare. Do I have to get that approved in advance, or can I retroactively apply for it if I have the paperwork after I get back from my trip? Chatbot basically says you have 90 days to basically file your quote unquote claim, if you will, against bereavement fare. And you just got to show it your ticket and all the kinds of things, paperwork, and you're good to go. So he does. He goes on the trip, comes back. Basically, Air Canada says, no, that's not our policy at all, and points to a web page, their website, where the site very clearly says that their policy is you have to get it approved before you go. He says, well, that's not what your chatbot says. And by the way, I have screenshots to do it. And they're like, well, okay, so we'll give you a discounted ticket. And he's like, no, I want the bereavement fare. They fight. They go to court, which is sort of a small claims court sort of tribunal thing in Canada. And basically, Air Canada like goes all in on fighting this thing. And the fascinating thing about this, and this is really, I guess, the story, is Air Canada's argument for it. Because they basically said, look, our AI chatbot made all that up itself. We shouldn't be liable because the AI chatbot just made up stuff and it's not our fault. And as as Pepper Brooks might say in Dodgeball, it's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how that works out for them. Because that's the key. And by the way, they were found liable for the whole thing, right? It was like, no, and the judge had a fantastic sort of comeback to that sort of opinion, where the judge said, well, what's to say, which one should we trust? Like, should we trust the website page or should we trust what your AI chatbot says? Because they're both your website. Yeah. But so which one is the right one, right? How are people supposed to judge what's the right answer to this? You have to be consistent. You have to be clarity, because otherwise we have to trust one of those things. And obviously, he trusted the one that he interacted with first. So that's the thing. The lesson for us all coming out of this, and how they were a big loser here. I mean, and let's be honest, not that big a loser. I mean, they lost a few $100, right? But it's the pillar effect that starts to happen here, right? What could be, right? What could have happened, right? Something much more damaging. And it's a great lesson to us as marketers, as I was just saying a few minutes ago, with regards to what we were talking about with search, is that Gen AI, we just have to realize it's only as good as the content and the data that we feed it. And if you feed it, and I've actually seen this happen with a client of ours who fed it a customer help document repository, where in one of the folders was basically a bunch of documents where people were making fun of customers and where people were answering snarky questions, and it was sort of it's supposed to be a fun folder, but they pointed the ChatGPT to learn from it, and they were shocked when it started to come back with answers that included some of that language. And it's like, you have to figure out what your right content strategy is, and what you're feeding generative AI in terms of your chatbots, in terms of your learning models, in terms of all of those kinds of things, because it's only as good as your content. And if your content sucks, guess what? The chatbot's going to suck too. It's going to be wrong. It's going to make stuff up that doesn't exist. And I talked earlier about the sort of pricing thing, the pricing challenge there. And I actually did it. I mean, I went out and looked at CRM systems, and then I asked another one about a big enterprise technology company. I said, oh, tell me about their digital asset management system. And of course, the ChatGPT basically came back and said, oh, they've got a great one and it's amazing. It's got all these features and blah, blah, blah. And I went, no, I don't. I'm pretty sure that's wrong. So I went and found where they actually sourced that page to and that knowledge. And it was basically the company in a press release talking about their integration with a third-party partner. So they were basically pulling the features of the third-party partner without mentioning it and applying it to the actual company. So we do that all the time, right? That is something that happens all the time. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have to actually, as the kids call it these days, red team your chatbot, your AI, assistant, whatever it is that you're using your content with your content, because only you can know if it's your story that's being told. So that's my big loser for the week.
Seems like, why would they fight that? What a silly thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just the press alone, it's just dumb. They should just said, yep, you're right. We screwed up. It was our fault. Boom. There you go. Done. Yeah. Just
put it to bed.
The Streisand effect in full gear there. Mm-hmm. Okay. So now it's time for our rants and raves as we get to the end of the show here. And this is where Joe and I go off on a little bit of a rant or a little bit of a rave over something that makes us feel like, makes us feel like we own Bitcoin, or makes us feel like we don't own Bitcoin at the moment.
I feel bad.
Yeah. It's again, would you like to go first, or would you like me to
I'll go first. I do want to mention, because I don't want to forget that we still have our contest to be part of our live This Old Marketing at Content Entrepreneur Expo, May 5th through 7th. So if you want to be a guest on This Old Marketing in Cleveland and live at the show, go and register at cex.events, and then make sure you use TOM, TOM 100 as the discount code, and then you'll be entered into a drawing, and then you might be a guest on our show live, which I think we've had, if I'm right, I think we've had 4 guests in all of the history of
right?
our. Is it 4 over 11 years? This would
I
be the
can count.
fifth.
I can count 2, but
I thought like Todd Wheatland, Tim
Todd Whelan.
Washer,
Oh, the live shows. Yes, I
the
forgot about
live
the live shows.
shows. That's
Todd
all I'm
Whelan did
thinking
the
about.
live
The
shows.
live
Yeah,
shows. Something.
yeah.
It's not very many people.
Tim Washer was also on that show. Yeah,
It's going to be an honor.
yeah.
We think.
We
All right.
think. Yeah.
So my commentary, I guess, is, and I'm not sure what to do with this, but I'm hoping that it becomes something. And there's a bill that's going through right now in Florida, your favorite state of Florida, and it's happening right now. But basically, Florida lawmakers passed a ban on social media for kids that are under 16. Now, that's
Wow.
very broad.
All right.
And it's very unwieldy, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. And from what I read, I don't think anything's going to happen. I think Governor DeSantis is going to go and veto this. There's a lot of things to work through. There's big implications about saying that, because you're basically saying, hey, parents, you don't know how to parent your kid, so we're going to do it for you. I don't believe that should be a thing. What I'm hoping is that these types of laws will be the kickstart for companies like Meta and TikTok and Snap. Snap's got to be a tough one because the users are so young, to age gate. I don't know what that age should be. I don't know if it's 16. I don't know if it's 13, whatever it is. I think that we have the ability to check and to see. Now, of course, there's ways around it. There will always be ways around it, but I would like something to say, hey, you can join us on Twitter, but you have to be 16. Yeah. Something like that. That's all I want to see. Because and we've talked about it on this show, I believe that social media, the effects of social media on the younger population is a horrible thing. We're talking about mental health issues. We're talking about all sorts of suicidal tendencies that come out of too much social media. This is a big problem. Online gambling is coming out of social media. There's a lot of horrible things. And I don't know how to stop that, but I think this is one way. So I don't know if I'm kudos to this bill, but I like the fact that hopefully it will lead to something positive. And I think it has to start with the companies themselves and not from government.
Well, it's just, I mean, this is the wrong way to legislate it in my mind. It's the wrong way to legislate it in my mind. I mean, what we really need, and we've talked about on this show before, is what we really need are for the social media companies to step up and make every account be verified. Whether you're and if you do that, then what you're doing is what theoretically all those politicians in Florida and Texas are really asking for anyway. Which because let's not forget, they're basically saying let's ban books, right? They're banning books in Florida, and yet passing a law that says basically that the young people can't be on social media. So it's like, the parents know the best until not, right? They think, oh, parents should have the ultimate choice here, except where social media is involved, and then we're going to make a law. So, and then they want free speech, and it's like, it just makes your head spin. And so this is the wrong way to do it. And so, but if they could somehow compel the social media companies, and that includes Meta and Google and certainly X, and all of them, to basically compel you to actually have a verified account, it would solve so much of it. Yes. Right? Because now you are actually making the parents vouch for the fact that they signed their kid up for this thing. And that's the kid has to basically be real, and you have to be real online, and it would solve a lot more of this than simply mandating some magical age of 16.
I'm totally with you. That's what I'm hoping it leads to, something like verification. I think we're still years out, but I think ultimately that's where we have to go. And if we have to do it through efforts like this, which are really weird and probably won't work, just to get the attention, great.
Fair enough. It does get the conversation going. That I'll grant you that. Yeah, it does get the conversation going.
Right. What do you got, sir?
Very quickly here. This is an article that we'll link to in Adweek, which is, the headline is, "The Fractional CMO is a trendy marketing title." And by the way, it's not going anywhere. This is something that I've seen. And basically the article speaks about how post-pandemic, the chief marketer role is really emerging as one of the more prominent jobs that is sort of done at the temporary level. And I was considering this at the end of the last year to get into this because I've watched my consulting practice sort of evolve and change. And I realized really at the beginning of this year, I realized I've kind of already been doing it for 10 years. I've been doing the fractional marketing leader thing for 10 years. It's just we weren't calling it fractional marketing leader. I mean, when you and I got into business together, I was never an employee of CMI. I was always sort of just your partner, right? We just sort of made a business arrangement where I was your partner there on a fractional basis and still ran my consulting company and ran all of the things. And so what I wanted to say is my experience so far as I've started to pivot into this area has been, it's difficult. It's there's a lot of noise right now about it. It seems to be resonating with clients. It seems to be resonating with people that are actually looking at this model. So I'm all in on it. Basically, I've been going all in, sort of marketing myself as this. I'll shout out, sort of promotion, if you will, right? If you're a tech company, I'm specializing in obviously tech companies and media companies, because that's where my sweet spot. So if you're in there and you need marketing leader help on a fractional basis, I'm here, wave my hands, jazz hands, all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested, reach out. But I'm finding it to be a very interesting model because we talk a lot about how the CMO model, the marketing leader model, is such a tenuous position in most companies. And this is a win-win. This is a win-win for marketing that experiences way more change than almost any other function in the business, right? Whether that be sales, accounting, legal, et cetera, where you really want to build those institutional sort of models up with accounting and legal and operations and finance and all those kinds of things. Marketing is much more fluid these days, and moving people in and out can be a great way to sort of keep a fluid sort of ideas coming, ideas flowing without the heavy encumbrances of big AOR, agency of record relationships, and keep those marketing people. Now, there's a whole skill that's involved there in managing that process. And I'm going to be writing a little more about that as I sort of learn what's really going on here. But anyway, I wanted to sort of shout it out because it's a thing now, and I'm into the thing. So there you go.
You're right. I've seen that fractional CMO phrase, if you will, whatever term, use more this in the last 3 months than I've ever seen it. It's really incredible how much that's been.
And I've resisted the fractional CMO thing because I think it's more fractional marketing leader, because I think a lot of businesses don't really see themselves as having a CMO, because we've talked about this on this show before, where the CMO role can be a little like, really, is that what we want? Or do we just want, a chief digital officer, a chief customer officer, a chief content officer, a chief, where do we, there's a marketing. So I've been going with the term fractional marketing leader, just as a way of positioning myself. But, I certainly recognize that fractional CMO is kind of what the kids are dancing to.
You're going to have to do it. You got to go that way.
Yeah. It's interesting.
I'm going to see. Now, you're going to add it to your website?
Oh yeah, it's already done.
Oh,
that's done. Yeah, my website is done with that. My personal website is certainly done with that. My new LinkedIn profile is up there. And again, waving the flag, open for business. So if you're interested,
good.
I am for sale.
If I was looking for a fractional CMO, I would hire you.
I can be had, man. I can be had.
I can be bought.
You can have me. Anyway, that's it. What do you got going on this week? You're off. You're off on another.
I'm off again.
Adventure.
We've got a special episode next week. We're doing a little family trip for a few days, spending some good quality time. Our oldest is on spring break, so looking forward to spending some good quality time. And as you know, I mean, this happens every year. February and March, lots of time off for Joe.
Yeah,
because
lots of sunshine.
I'm breakable. And so I need to put myself back together in February and March, and I do that with lots of time off. So what do you got going on?
Working is really the key. You just came back from a speaking of fractional clients, came back from a client in Austin this last week, and I'm working on some stuff to get done there. But other than that, sort of enjoying Southern California weather, right? The beautiful Southern California weather. We have wonderful. The sunshine you seek. So
just the quick note. Yesterday in Cleveland, it was 70 degrees, low 70s.
Nice. Very nice.
And within 3 hours, it went down to the high 20s.
Oh, there you go.
Welcome to Cleveland.
Yeah. It must have rained or snowed. It must have rained or snowed with that big of a temperature.
It snowed.
Change. Yeah.
It snowed.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
there you
Yeah.
go.
All right. All right.
All right. Well, we do have a special episode next week, so I hope you'll tune in for that. It's going to be a fun one. We're going to talk about, oh, I'm not going to tell you what we're going to talk about because you know why? We're going to tease it that way. But until we do see you next week, just remember, everybody, it is your story to tell. Maybe use AI, but tell it well. We'll see you next week on This Old Marketing.